Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits. But I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out, because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. Just a quick reminder on how to reach me for questions to be answered for new episodes, or just general comments about the show. My email is welcometogeektown, all spelled out, at gmail.com. Or you can visit the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, to leave a reply to a specific episode, or click submit a question if you'd rather not make your comment public. I'd love to hear from my listeners more and really get a dialogue going, so if you have anything you'd like to say, please do so. Thanks. It's been a few months since we've done a replacements episode of the show, and so I thought I'd do that this week. As a reminder, Justin B. asked early on, what happens to the replacement heroes when the original inevitably comes back? Well, this time we're looking at a rare instance where the first one to don this costume has never returned to this role. We're diving into the Bat family again, this time going through all the various Robins. Let's get started. Before we discuss any of his replacements, let's look at the original. Chances are, if you know only one version of Robin, it's Dick Grayson. Debuting in Detective Comics number 38, just 11 months after Batman's debut in issue number 27, Dick was the youngest member of a family trapeze act known as the Flying Graysons. When circus owner C.C. Haley refused to pay protection money to crime lord Boss Zuko, the Graysons were the unfortunate victims, falling to their death after the trapeze ropes had been cut. Bruce Wayne happened to be in the audience that day and took Grayson in. Together they were able to bring Zuko to justice, and Dick joined Batman's crusade against crime as Robin. In story, Robin is usually noted as being named for the bird, although artist Jerry Robinson noted in interviews that the design had more to do with Robin Hood. Dick was a preteen when he became Robin, and as he grew, he and Batman started to disagree more and more. Eventually, Dick decided to leave Robin behind, and has since been going by the name Nightwing. A name taken from the Superman mythos, as pre-Crisis, Nightwing was the name Superman went by when he was fighting crime in the bottle city of Kandor. Post-Crisis, Nightwing was a legend from Krypton's history that Kal-El told Dick the story of when he was deciding what to do after leaving Batman. Other than a couple of short stints as Batman himself, I'll eventually do a replacements episode for Batman, so we'll go into more detail on that down the line. Dick has kept the Nightwing persona since leaving the Robin mantle for others to pick up. And that's just what they've done, starting with Jason Todd. Jason has two very different origin stories, depending on whether you're talking pre-Crisis or post-Crisis. If those terms are unfamiliar to you, be sure to go back to episode 1 of Welcome to Geektown, where I discuss Crisis and all the other reboots of the DC universe. Pre-Crisis, Jason's story was incredibly similar to Dick's. A son of circus acrobats whose parents were killed, Jason was taken in by Bruce Wayne and became the Dark Knight's sidekick. However, it was just 2 years later that Crisis happened, and DC took the opportunity to differentiate Todd from Grayson. Now, Jason Todd was a street punk who had tried to steal the tires off the Batmobile, but had been caught by the Caped Crusader. Batman made sure the young orphan was placed in a boarding school for troubled youths. According to this new origin, Jason helped Batman later catch a group of criminals around the same time that Dick Grayson had moved on from being Robin, and Batman decided to take Jason in as the new Robin. This new take on Jason made him much more rebellious and less likely to follow Batman's orders in the field. Fan reaction was divided on this version of the character, and in a still controversial decision, DC decided to leave his fate up to the readers directly, with a 1-900 number vote. Kids, ask your parents about 1-900 numbers. With less than a 2% difference, the votes came down on the side of killing Jason Todd, which is exactly what DC did in a story titled Death in the Family. Jason was murdered by the Joker, who, in a case of overkill, both beat the young sidekick with a crowbar, then left him to die in a warehouse that he had rigged to explode. Batman found his protege too late to do anything about it. For almost 20 years, that was Jason's status quo. He was listed alongside Bucky and Uncle Ben as characters who would never come back to life. You'll note from my replacements episode on Captain America that Bucky has also since returned. We're waiting, Uncle Ben. In 2005, with the Infinite Crisis storyline, DC explained some changes in continuity, with Superboy Prime literally punching the wall between universes trying to break through. These reality punches caused ripples in time that changed history. One of these punches brought Jason back to life, albeit interred in his coffin. He escaped a second death, but was hospitalized as a John Doe. He was able to make it far enough away from the cemetery to not be associated with the disturbed grave, and spent 1 year in a coma. Eventually, he wakes up, but with no memory of his previous life. After being recognized from his combat skills, Talia al Ghul takes in Jason and restores him back to health with the Lazarus Pit, which also restored his memories. Since his return, Jason has mostly adopted the Red Hood moniker, which has a long history with the Batman franchise, having been established back in 1951 as the Joker's first alias before he was doused in chemicals. As the Red Hood, Jason was originally angry with Batman's abandonment and worked against him. He also donned a Nightwing costume in an effort to disgrace Dick Grayson's Nightwing. This has mostly been explained as a side effect of the Lazarus Pit causing him to be mentally unstable. In more recent appearances, while he's still willing to kill in order to obtain what he sees as justice, he's buried the hatchet with the Bat family and is in reasonably good standing with Bruce, Dick, and the rest. Jason also has the distinction of being the only other Robin seen in live action besides the original. He's played by Curran Walters in the Titans TV show on the DC Universe streaming service, while Dick Grayson is played by Brenton Thwaites. Moving on to Robin number 3, we have Tim Drake, named for Tim Burton, director of the then most recent Batman movie. Tim is the first Robin not to have lost both his parents before donning the red, green, and yellow. Introduced in 1989 and keeping the Robin mantle for 20 years, over twice as long as Jason's tenure, but not even half as long as the originals, Tim was also the first Robin to get his own solo book. From the onset, Tim was shown to be much more of a thinker than a fighter. He deduced the first Robin's identity After witnessing him perform an acrobatic maneuver he knew that only Dick Grayson could perform, having seen the Flying Graysons as a child. From there, it was not a far reach to figure out Batman's secret identity. After Jason Todd's apparent death, Tim noted that Batman had become more reckless and brutal in his methods. Deciding that Batman needed Robin, he first approached Dick Grayson asking him to return, but then volunteered himself when he realized that wasn't going to happen. Unlike the first two Robins, Tim spent quite a bit of time in isolation and training before he was allowed to don the costume and join Batman out in the field. It was during this training period that Tim's mother died. She was kidnapped and tricked into drinking poison water before Batman had a chance to rescue her. Despite this tragedy, Tim has been portrayed as fairly upbeat as Robin, able to joke and have fun while still staying focused on the tasks needed to perform his duties as a crime fighter. While partnered with Batman, Tim as Robin also was a member of the teen teams known as Young Justice, then later the Teen Titans, serving as leader most of that time, becoming best friends with Superboy, aka Connor Kent. Check out episode 15 for more info on him and the other replacement Supermen. Tim briefly had to give up being Robin after his dad discovered his nocturnal activities, but eventually came to terms with his son being a vigilante. Unfortunately, that acceptance came shortly before Tim's father was killed during the Identity Crisis miniseries. Losing his girlfriend Stephanie, we'll get to her in a second, and best friend Superboy the following year, Tim donned a red and black costume and relocated to Bloodhaven to be close with his stepmother, who had a breakdown and been placed in a mental hospital. Even through all this tragedy, Tim stayed more optimistic than one would expect. When Batman apparently died in Final Crisis, Tim was the only one who believed he was still alive. At this point, Tim was fired as Robin by Dick, who was currently taking Batman's place, and Tim adopted the Red Robin codename and costume. He went on a worldwide search to find evidence that Bruce was still alive. Obviously, Bruce does eventually return. He had been lost in time, reincarnating over thousands of years. And Tim came back to Gotham to work with Bruce on the Batman Incorporated global mission, which you may remember from episode number 49, as well as rejoining the Teen Titans. He's been a member of the Bat family in good standing ever since. This brings us to Robin number 4, the briefest of all tenures, with Stephanie Brown. I've already covered much of Stephanie's history back in episode 42, as she eventually takes on the Batgirl name, but as a brief recap, Stephanie is the daughter of Cluemaster, a Riddler wannabe who leaves clues at his crimes. Growing frustrated with him, she donned a costume and foiled some of his plans under the name Spoiler, then expanded to stopping other crimes as she found she enjoyed the vigilante life. She became involved as a friend, then girlfriend to Robin number 3, but broke up with him when he refused to reveal his real name. Batman does take her into his confidence and tells her both Bruce and Tim's name, and when Tim has to give up his life as Robin, mentioned earlier, Stephanie successfully petitions Batman to become his next sidekick. Unfortunately, the first female Robin did not last long, as she continually disobeyed Batman in the field, and he proclaimed her not ready for the position. Trying to prove herself worthy, Stephanie takes one of Batman's long-term plans to rid Gotham of the mob families and tries to execute it. However, since the plan was not actually complete yet, it ended up starting a gang war instead, and led to Stephanie's apparent death. As mentioned in that previous episode with Stephanie, her death was faked, and she went on to become Batgirl up until the New 52 reboot. Finally, we have the current Robin, Damian Wayne. The only biological son of Bruce Wayne. Dick, Jason, and Tim have all been shown to be adopted by Bruce in some stories, although later stories occasionally disregard Dick and Jason's adoptions. Damien was raised by his mother Talia and the League of Assassins. He was genetically engineered, grown in an artificial womb, and trained from birth to be a ruthless and effective killing machine, until age 8, when Talia gave custody to Bruce for Damien's safety. Damien first became Robin under Dick Grayson's second tenure as Batman, when Bruce was believed to be dead, as he felt Tim was too much of an equal to make a good sidekick to him. And Damien continued as Robin when Bruce returned. As you can imagine, Damien's tenure as Robin has been filled with contentious moments between him and his father, who believes strongly in the sanctity of life. While sarcastic and full of himself, Damien does follow orders from Bruce, so the two do end up working together well. In addition to working with Batman, Damien also put together his own team of Teen Titans and has been leading them for a couple of years. He also has a close friendship with Superman's son, John Kent, despite their very different outlooks on life. Now, most of the history I've discussed is the post-crisis / pre-Flashpoint universe. When the New 52 hit, a lot of the details changed for these characters. Ages were moved around to accommodate a 5-year timeline, meaning Bruce had 5 sidekicks in 5 years, going through them like a hot knife through butter. Also, Tim's origin changed to remove his connection to Dick Grayson, as well as never having been named Robin, but had always been Red Robin. The reason I'm glossing over these changes is that with the Rebirth storyline, basically all of this has been retconned once again back to their original pre-Flashpoint versions. So unless you're looking at a very specific 5-year period in comics history, the details I just gave are fairly irrelevant. Now, rumors still abound about a new Generation 5 event, which may change the histories of these characters yet again, but until that becomes more concrete, this should give you a good idea of who the various Robins are and how they fit into Batman and the DC Universe's history. So, I hope you enjoyed this replacements episode of Welcome to Geektown. If you did, or even if you didn't, let me know. Or, if you have any questions for a regular episode of the show, I'd love to hear from you as well. Either way, go ahead and send me an email at welcometogeektown@gmail.com. Or you can go to welcome2, the number 2 for this one, geektown.com, and click Submit a Question if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcometogeektown or Twitter @geektownpodcast. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, come join the Patreon at patreon.com/welcometogeektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them, "Welcome to Geektown, population, us." Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.